Hello everyone and welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to go through my trades ahead of round 7 for AFL SuperCoach. Let's get into it. So if you watched the round wrap video, my trades haven't really changed that much. I'm still getting in Angus Anderson and Elijah Sardis, but to trade them out, I'm going to trade Jagger Smith, who was my original trade plan. But then my other trade was going to be Leo Lombard, but I just don't think there's enough cash on him. And so I am decided to trade Jai Sarong, because if we look at him, his break-even is pretty high, 64. And we look at his scoring, he's only scored 3 scores above that. He scored 3 scores below that. It's a 50-50 and he's against the Dogs at Marvel. It's a bit of a daunting matchup. So I'm going to trade him out as well and get... Where is he? Where's Angus Anderson? He's up here. So these are the 2 trades I'm going with. A trade I wanted to do was maybe, instead of Sardis, bringing in Zach Merritt, but I don't have enough cash for that. And it may not have to dig into a Tanner Bruin, which I don't want to do, because I feel Tanner Bruin, he's still got some cash to make. If he goes 81, he gets 10K more, puts his break even back a little bit more. But he can definitely go more than 81. He could be on for 100 against Port. Not a 10, a 100. And then he's getting up to 420K. And so I just think Elijah Sardis is a good trade-in, because I trust he'll make the money. I trust he'll keep his role. He has scored very well in the 2 games SZN were competitive in, against Melbourne and Gold Coast. And it's not like he's got that much of an easy run, but then again, I don't think anyone's going to be tagging him. I think he's just going to be that guy who gets 25 possessions, maybe 10 contested possessions a game, just a solid, consistent scorer. I think the fact that he's playing for his career right now, and right now I think Brad Scott's coaching for his career, so I think they're not going to break what worked. And Sardis in the midfield evidently worked. And so I think I'm going to put him on field over the likes of a Blamires. I don't think Blamires is going to score as well. Cook's going to come on field for Devrob. And then I'll use Devrob to maybe loop between a Blamires and an Anderson. Or something I've been looking at doing, I'll put this C on, let's say like that just for now. Something I've been looking at doing is actually putting Bont on the bench. Because if you've been reading the news, Bont has a bit of an injury worry. He's been named, but he injured his knee in the game against Geelong. And he also has a James Jordan tag. And those 2 combined don't really fare well for Bont's level of scoring this weekend. He might be on for another 66, which means those of you who don't have him, he's going to get very, very cheap very quickly. Because if he gets, I'll give him a 70 here, he drops 70K and there's a break even of 210. So those of you who didn't jump on him, good job. If you started him, of course, you got the 2 big score, or you got quite a few actually big scores. But those of you who didn't, you're going to be able to get him sub 500K easily. And then I think I might loop him with Angus Anderson if Angus Anderson does well. I move Selwood over Jakes, put Jakes on the bench, because Jakes is someone who I also wanted to get rid of, because I don't know, I think he might have just lost his role a little bit. I didn't watch this Geelong game, so I don't know how well he did. I probably won't be able to watch this game either. But I also just think with all the changes that the Dogs are making in their team because of all the injuries, I think Jake should be solidified in there. And of course, my thoughts on him is that their season is basically over, because of course you've got Sam Darcy injured. You've got James O'Donnell, Rory Lobb, Tom Liberatore injured. These are 4 pretty decent core players. You bring in the likes of Josh Dolan, Jed Busslinger, Ryan Gardner. These 3 are all going to go out before Lockie Jakes. I think the distributing off the back line has always been an issue for them. He's named on field at halfback. I think they just got to keep what works, get more games into him as their sort of future. And yeah, he should stay in this team. And if he's going at 65s, he'll make it up to 310k. He'll make another 50k. And that's something I don't think Sarong or Jagger Smith have in them. Of course, Jagger Smith, it sucks to trade him out because he was looking so promising. But he should still be able to make the 62. It's just I'm not sure by how much. If we look at his scores, he's made it all but one of the games. That was a really wet game, so that maybe that's an outlier. But he seems to have lost his role. He hasn't been up to this high level of scoring we saw against Richmond and Melbourne. And a stat that's glaring is that he's only scored twice over 70, which means at that price of $298, he's basically maxed out. And I think it is time to move on Jagger Smith. And we touched on Sarong. And I think something that's really important now is that we start to upgrade our teams. I haven't done that, of course. I'm quite behind. And it is a bit daunting because I've seen teams that have 16, 17 primos or primo/mid prices. I only have 13. I've got Sinclair, Naz, Clark, Butters, Daicos, Bont, which is very, very bare in the midfield. Gawn, Jackson, and then Sheasel, Track, Pickett, Miller, Flanders. I'm counting Flanders as a keeper right now because if he can keep up this level of scoring, he will be a keeper. But I've seen other people that have maybe 2 more in the defense, 2 more in the midfield. And yeah, it is quite daunting for me as someone who's used every single trade I possibly can have used. But I think I just need to trust in my planned trades. And talking about planned trades, I've actually made a spreadsheet of all my planned trades over the buys. This is assuming no injuries. Of course, it goes from round 6 to 16. This has already happened. And it allows me to actually finish my team basically with 3 trades left if I'm counting Murdoch Milan as a keeper. Because if we look back at this, Murdoch Milan, he's averaging 95. And if he can keep averaging 95, then I think he should be a keeper. He could be a very just cheap F6 for those like me who might not have enough trades to finish the teams. But I'll go back to this because I think for upgrade season, you really need to start doing these 1-up, 1-downs and getting these players. Like, sure, I'm not getting any primos this round, which is something a lot of people are doing. They're getting a Clark, they're getting a Merritt, they're getting a Naz. But keeping this 332k that I'm keeping, as you can see, it's up there. It allows me to basically go 1-up, 1-down for the next 5 weeks. And not really use that much big assets. I think the only player who's over really 350k that I'm getting rid of is Bruin in these next 4 weeks. And I think it is good to plan ahead when in upgrade season. Plan ahead. I've seen people writing notes on paper of their trades and their trade thoughts. And I think that's a very good thing to do because if you can plan ahead and say, hey, I'm going to get Merritt. I want to get Merritt before his good run. Then I could get Callahan maybe after he comes down in price and I can get Lockie Ash. And you can make that happen with wiggle room. So I'll quickly run through how this actually works because I've gotten all these projected scores using SuperCoach Projector, which let's say I click on Flynn Perez. It's a very handy tool. You go down and it's a Chrome extension. Click the extension, reload the page, and it activates. And then you can just put whatever score you want, let's say Flynn Perez scores 60 against Gold Coast. Then he scores an 80 against Collingwood, but then he only scores a 46 against Freo. And it calculates basically what price he's going to be. And so I've used these scores with basically their averages. I forgot to change this. I actually changed Bruin down to 85. I've tried to be a bit conservative on what I think they'll average. So there's a lot of 60s, a couple 70s, but someone like Josh Lindsay, I think he is someone who could average more than that. I mean, he's actually on 66. If we look at, I think there's, I'll try to find someone who I've undervalued. Someone like a Selwood maybe, who I've got averaging 65s. He's only averaging 56, but these last 2 games have been 70s basically. And he's got a lot of games that have been 70s. So I think don't obviously say that someone like a Philippou is going to average a 75 because that's probably not going to happen. But you make these, you put the data in, and then down here, this is going to be the sum of the 2 players I'm trading out. So in this case, it's Poo and it's Devrob, and I've highlighted them in red so I know not to use their scores later. Then I've got the player cost and the player I want to get. And for merit, I assume he'll be 610k because if we look back at this, you can also use it to calculate the prices of the premos. And Zach Merritt, I don't see him getting that more expensive than 610k because if he goes to 130, he basically gets up to 610k. And I think 130 will be a very, very good score on Anzac Day. Of course, maybe he goes 150 again, but it's not like he's going to get too expensive for me. And because I think something you really need in upgrade season is a bit of wiggle room, which I've got here under this remaining thing. And so how this is calculated is you take this score, which is the combined total of the 2 primo or the 2 rookies I've traded out. Then you take the bench or the bank cash, which I've started here, and then you get the price of the player. So you add these 2 up and minus it by that, and then you minus 119k for the rookie. Next round, it's probably going to be Retchco, and it leaves you with basically your bank cash. And then the next week, instead of using this, you use that, and it keeps going. And so I've used it to basically plan all my trades for the next couple weeks, for the next couple months, actually. Of course, this is barring any injuries. And of course, given how this season has gone, there's probably going to be a couple more. But yeah, I think you don't even need to whip up like a fancy spreadsheet like this. Just plan on paper the next couple of trades and how you're going to make those work and what trades you can do now to more easily facilitate that. But also plan for wiggle room. Like what I've done here, the most wiggle room I have in a trade in the short term is $64,000 for Lockie Ash. So if Lockie Ash gets above, I think 607k, I won't be able to get him. But he's not going to do that. And so I think you want to have at least 30k of wiggle room because it means you could, let's say if, of course, I don't think he had the best first game, but someone like a Xavier Taylor, he had a 32. But let's say he had a much better score. Someone like a Sam Cumming, actually, who's a Richmond midfielder, could be a very good rookie coming in, could go 80s. You never know. I mean, he's come off an injury, so you wouldn't expect him to do that well. But, of course, he's a lot more expensive than the 119k rookie that I'm projecting I'm going to get after round 9. And so this wiggle room works quite well. And then I've also got a couple notes here. If Callahan, I'm banking on Callahan copping a tag in this game, in this next game against North Melbourne. I could trade Devrob instead of Poo, but I did that. That's an old note. I'll get rid of that. And then I've also got a couple buy orders, I like to call them. It's like a stock market term where I think if a player goes below this price, if Grundy, Baz, Holmes, or Heaney go below 610k in any of these weeks, I reckon you grab them because, of course, they're going to be a top-of-line primo. And then towards the end here, when I've run out of rookies, I'm just assuming I'll have rookies that get up to 280k, which I think is a fair assumption. Someone like a Jakes is probably going to get there, hopefully. And then I've also got a target list. And I think you want to make a lot of these lists of just players you want to try and get. I've got Callahan, Ash, McCluggage, Holmes, Baz, Grundy, all of which are here. And then I've got maybe Whitfield, maybe Roberts, maybe Wilkie, because I've got a slot here for a 580k defensive midfield primo. And that's based on if Holmes gets DPP or not. If he gets DPP, of course, I'll probably get a midfielder. If he doesn't, probably get a defender. But though that could be either Whitfield, Roberts, or Wilkie. It's probably going to be Whitfield, but I'd like to wait on Roberts because I think he's someone who could definitely be a very good primo. And so I think that not only is something I like to do because I'm a bit of a math brain. I like spreadsheets. I'm a bit of a nerd like that, but it also does give me hope because I've gone through so many trades and I'm starting to realize I might not be able to finish my team, but something like that gives me hope. But I think it also is just good to plan for the future, just like in real life, because something like SuperCoach, it is unpredictable. Like, of course, no one could have predicted Isaac Heaney getting injured, which is something that's happened quite recently. I think he did his hamstring, and we will actually touch on the injury lists later on in this video and have a look at them. And I'm not sure if they're updated to have Isaac Heaney on here, but he is going to miss this Western Bulldogs game with, I think, a hamstring. Hopefully it comes back soon enough, though, because I was banking on him getting a lot cheaper with these tag games. If we go back to this spreadsheet, I had him at 620k by round 11. And, I mean, hopefully he can get there because someone like an Isaac Heaney is going to become a lot cheaper. And this is why I didn't get him earlier on. He has the Giants tag against Bedford. He only got on 102. Then he has the Dogs against one of the best midfields in the comp. Of course, he's not going to play that. Then he's got Melbourne and North Melbourne, which are two teams that have been bolstered up the ladder a lot more than we thought. North Melbourne due to an easy run, but Melbourne due purely because of the fact they've actually been pretty good. And I think both these teams are going to want to be competitive. Both of them have young midfielder taggers. They've got Colton Tholstrup for Melbourne and Finn O'Sullivan for North, who I think is coming back. We will confirm that in the team sheets this afternoon. But both of them, I could see him going an 80. And so I'm going to put 80 for here because, of course, he's not going to play that. Break-even's probably going to stay the same. And then maybe an 80 for Finn O'Sullivan. Or maybe they don't tag him as hard for Melbourne, and he gets a 110. Then he has a good game against Collingwood. Then he has a bad game against Geelong because, of course, Oisin Mullen gets another 80. And this has him dropping down to 567. Of course, that's quite drastic. Do I think it's going to happen? Probably not. So I can go just a straight 110 average. He still drops down to 600k. And so I think this is especially why you don't buy players at this really expensive price. Of course, I did it with Gawn. I did it with Bont. And now I'm sort of regretting it because they're all coming down in price. I think those were special cases, though, because I had just really expensive players that were injured. I had, I think, Rosie, Track, Sherry. But, they'll always come back down in price. And I've sort of gone on a bit of a tangent. Yeah, someone like Archie Roberts, I think, he definitely could be a keeper. Been pretty consistent so far. And that's something I value, consistency, because it's no use having a player that's going to score 140 one week and then 60 another week. But if you get someone like a Zach Merritt, who has flown under the radar and is someone I do really want to get in this round, but I can't. Of course, he's had an 87. Then he's had a 107, 116, 127, 139, and a 50, a 150. He also has a pretty good run. So I think if you're in the market for a primo, don't pass on Zach Merritt because Zach Merritt is going to be really, really appealing, especially for this stretch down the buys Richmond, West Coast, Carlton, Melbourne, North, Saints. Does he get tagged in these 2 games? Potentially. But Zach Merritt, he's become so versatile in these last couple years. He's been taking kick-ins, which is something I think is very valuable for a midfielder. You just get these cheap touches. Max Holmes has also been taking a couple kick-ins and has actually killed the pick of Tom Stewart. And that's something else I want to talk about is making sure the primos you do get in are top of liners. Because how I said before that a lot of people have 17 primo mid prices, I only have 13. I may only have 13, but I'm comfortable that the 13 I have being Sinclair, Naz, Clark, Butters, Daicos, Bont, Gawn, Jackson, Sheasel, Track, Pickett, Miller, and Flanders, apart from maybe Flanders, are all going to be top of line primos. Bont, Butters, Daicos are going to be top 3. Sinclair and Clark right now are top 3. Naz might be. I'd assume Naz would be come the end of the year because, of course, he'll learn how to deal with the tag. But, of course, Worrell, Roberts, Wilkie, and Parker, I'm not sure if they're going to be up this high come the end of the season. They still very well could be. And I wouldn't dissuade any of you from jumping on them, especially a Cal Wilker, who I think is a very good pod primo. And he's been extremely consistent. One of the few players who actually hasn't gotten below 100. But there are people who do have a Tom Stewart. There are people who do have a Josh Daicos. Dan Houston, I used to have him, but I traded him. Very happy I did. And then a Colby McKercher, who seemingly lost his role. And I don't want to have any of those guys come the end of the season. Because if you're getting a 95 average from a Dan Houston compared to a 110 average from like a Lockie Whitfield, that's 15 points around. For you'd assume, because people should really have their teams completed by round 17 or 18. Of course, don't take that with a grain of salt because I'm someone who's never completed a team. But if you complete your team at round 18, but you've got a Houston and someone else is a Whitfield, that's 15 points for 6 rounds you're leaking. That's like 90 points, which is quite a bit. And I think you do want to have all these top line primos. Like, that's why I really want to get in Grundy, Smith, Heaney, Holmes. I'll wait for them to come down, of course, because I don't want to get them at a high price because cash is at a premium right now, especially with the limited amount of trades we have. And so now that that's out of the way, that little ramble, I'm going to have a look at the injury sheets because the injury carnage has not let off. If I can find it here, I actually don't know where it is. There it is. Injury lists. Sam Banks, that could be big for SuperCoach. But going into Adelaide, nothing really's changed. Jordan Dawson, of course, wasn't playing last round due to the unfortunate circumstances that have occurred to him. Don't know if he's going to be back. Might affect the likes of a Rochelle or a Rankin pick. Similar is the Jake Soligo pick, but actually he wasn't getting CBAs in his last couple games. We look at DFS, which is a great little thing for showing like CBAs for all the teams. If we look at him, Jake Soligo, he actually didn't get any CBAs in the last 2 games. Is that a role change? Potentially. Will they move him back there? Also potentially. And then you've also got Dan Curtin, who's on the cusp of returning. Of course, he's probably going to start at the state leagues, but could also affect a Rochelle or Rankin pick, which makes me a bit glad I didn't jump on them. And then Sid Draper might be back, which would be great. He's someone I had in my preseason team. I think top 4 pick in that super draft last year. Very good talent and should get a lot of time in that Adelaide midfield, and someone who also will benefit from not having subs anymore. Brisbane, nothing really new. Of course, Darcy Fort was ill. Zane Zakostelski filled in and ruined a lot of people's captaincy scores. Does he stay ill? I mean, for me, hopefully. I mean, of course, I don't like to wish on people being sick or being unwell, being injured. But if Zane Zakostelski plays, that's, of course, a lot better for me. Nothing else really seems to be happening immediately. Dane Zorko still 1 to 2 weeks away. Down to Carlton, nothing really. I mean, Mark Pitney's out for at least a week with a hand. So Liam Reedy might be someone who gets ruck duties. And if we look at who Carlton are playing, I actually don't have any more Carlton players, but if we look at Liam Reedy, of course, he got a 31 in round 0. Doesn't look like he's going to be a cash option, but Luke Jackson, he's going to have to play Liam Reedy. Then Rowan Marshall, which is a very interesting thing and something we'll touch on later when we get to St Kilda's spot, could be a very good option to go, especially given he might have Liam Reedy in a week. But apart from that, Harry Mackay is out with a concussion, so is Ben Camprioli. He probably won't get a spot in the team. Harry Mackay, I don't think he knocks out anyone SuperCoach relevant. Of course, Elijah Hollands is probably not going to play. Going down to Collingwood, John DeGoey, Darcy Moore still side bottom, all a test. This is very, very bad for someone like a Dan Houston. Two of these, Darcy Moore and still side bottom, are prolific users along the wings and in the back line. Sam Swadling, 29 touches, could be another useful rookie. There's been a lot of good rookies that have been coming through recently. Really restocking the conveyor belt. I think Patrick Grechko, Charlie Edwards. Then now we've got Sam Cumming, Billy Cootie for Sydney, who's a mature ager. Another one of those. Hopefully he's as successful as the likes of an Angus Anderson and a Tom Myers and a Milan Murdoch. But going down to Essendon, nothing really here. No one back for a while. Ridley's out, which means, because of course, I think Ridley might have just come back for that one game or the game before. He came back for 2 games, and let's have a look at how Roberts was affected during those 2 games, because I don't think his scoring was as high. I mean, of course, Melbourne was still a pretty good score. Gold Coast was down. Did Ridley coming back affect his usage of the ball, and will it go up once Ridley goes back out? Potentially. So it could be one to go on who's still quite a decently priced option. Bailey Banfield is a test. Nothing else here. So, Sean Darcy, of course, out. Yeah, he's got a concussion and then a calf from Sean Darcy. So this looks a lot better for someone like a Luke Jackson. Nothing really else changing there. For Geelong, Jack Henry might be back. Not really SuperCoach relevant, and they are versing, I think, Port. And we don't have any Port forwards unless you've got a Mitch Georgiades, but it shouldn't really affect his SuperCoach scoring. Graham Myers, of course, TBC. Gold Coast, Noah Anderson is a test. Well, you'll have to keep a keen eye on the team sheets to see if he will be named or not, if you've held him. GWS, Aaron Cadman and Stephen Keneally are both tests. Joe Fonte is suspended. So if you still have him, might be the time to get him out, because you don't want a dead player on your team for an extra game, especially someone who looks like he's capped out in terms of his price. Stephen Keneally, of course, I don't think anyone has him anymore. Aaron Cadman, no. I mean, he has a good average, but don't think so. Gunston's a test. Charles a test. Dylan Moore and James Sicily both suspended for a round, so that should guarantee Perez will stay for at least one more round, but he has been pretty good in that wing slot. I don't think we actually have that many other pure wingers. We've got Weddle, who we can run on a wing. We've got a bunch of those half forwards who can also push up to a wing, but I think having someone like Flynn Perez who can really nail down a spot would be useful. And of course, Sam Mitchell's a good coach. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. And Perez has been doing pretty well, so I think he should be a strong hold. Melbourne, Jake Bowie a test. Giath, another test. So if you've got maybe if you still got a Windsor, still got a Xavier Lindsay, might not be good picks that much longer because of likes of Bowie being a prolific halfbacker. Same with GF. North Melbourne, of course, Tristan Cherry is back. Finn O'Sullivan is back. Big for the Tags because North, they play quite a couple big midfielders. They played Finn Callahan. They play Bailey Smith or Max Holmes, Isaac Heaney, Jordan Dawson or a Rochelle, then a Petrarca, then a Sarong. A lot of good tags for Finn O'Sullivan. And a lot of tags that could very much hurt us in our SuperCoach teams. Port Adelaide, it's actually quite the list, but Jack Lakoshi is 5 to 7 weeks. No one should have him anymore. Nothing that looks like it's going to come back and it really affect us for SuperCoach. Jack Watkins also put his name up for reselection. No, get out of here. We don't want you. Richmond. Tim Taranto's out with a concussion for a week. Sam Banks, collarbone for 6 weeks. Toby Nankerf is still at least 3 weeks out. And Maurice Frioli with a hamstring for 4 to 5 weeks. So they got hit hard on the weekend. Tom Lynch is back. Sam Cumming is going to debut. And so I think the likes of Tim Taranto and Sam Banks being out works really well for Sam Grill because he hasn't been scoring as well as of late. Of course, we are 2 games removed from that 90 score. And especially with some decent matchups coming up, Sam Grill, they're probably going to have to use him more throughout the midfield or halfback now with 2 big players out. So for those of you thinking of trading him out, I would recommend holding him. Of course, his break-even's not as high as a Smith or a Sarong, so I think you can afford to keep him. So Kilda, Anthony Caminiti should be back in. Tom De Koning is a test. Does remain a chance to play. So there was rumors that he might have been out for like 4 weeks or 6 weeks, which would have been very good for someone who wanted to bring in a Rowan Marshall. Because if he is out for a couple of weeks, Rowan Marshall, we know how good he was last year as a solo rucker. You got that spike score of a 179. He was very consistent. He finished the year with 105 average. It was a bit of an injury-affected season, but a lot of these 120s, 130s scores, of course, with and also, not to mention, a forward-eligible player. But with Tom De Koning potentially being back, it wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be a good pick. Max Kin potentially being back as well, which it'll probably be VFL. But if he comes back into the AFL after a couple of weeks, and then kicks a couple bags, he's quite cheap, 150k. He could be someone we look to go through if his body looks all right. Maybe comes back against Richmond, kicks a bag and gets like 100 points maybe, because he's someone who very well could get a big score. But of course, not something for right now. Sydney, nothing really. TBC. 8 weeks, 3 months, 4 months. Everyone's out for a while. Billy Cootie, mature age draftee. Hopefully can follow in the footsteps of Angus Anderson, as I said before. It looks to be more of a forward, 12 disposals, 3 goals. I think he's only midfielder eligible, but given the amount of DPP we have, I don't think that's a problem. Hopefully he's someone that can score quite well because, of course, we'll have Patrick Retchko next round. We need someone for the round after. And I know there's likes of Sam Cumming, but let's face it, Billy Cootie is much more cheap. Going to West Coast, Fred Rodriguez, you wouldn't expect him to get a spot in the team. So it doesn't really look like anything's going to change here. And then the Bulldogs. Marcus Bontempelli is a test, it's said. Of course, he has been named, but don't rule out the potential for it being a laid out. So keep your eye on the team sheets all the way up to the bounce time of 7:30 today. He might be named a late out. I reckon they shouldn't play him, actually. Rest him, duck the James Jordan tag, and come back fit and firing to go against Fremantle. Sam Darcy, of course, out for the season. He's a trade if you have him. Tim English, if you held him, 1 to 3 weeks away. Libba, concussion protocols, of course. It's looking grim for him and his career. Wish him all the best, of course, as someone who's suffered a couple of concussions myself. Would have worked 3 to 5 weeks. And James O'Donnell, hamstring, 4 to 5 weeks. So that's big for the Bulldogs, who have lost now their 2 tall defenders. So if for some reason you have a Sydney forward, I mean, of course, I think Malcolm Roses is a popular pick, but damn, the Sydney forwards are going to do really well this game. But I think also is good for Lockie Jakes' job security, because all these defenders going out, you want to keep him there. You want a bit of consistency. Maybe Selwood, who I think is a bit taller, plays a bit more of a lockdown role. Not good for him. Maybe Jakes gets some more time with the ball distributing. And that's the end of the injury lists. And so I will probably wrap it up. It has been a bit of a longer trades video. And there has been a bit of rambles, of course, with my spreadsheet and that. Do recommend planning for the future. I'll reiterate it again. Very, very good for upgrade season, especially now. I also recommend keeping a bit of cash, because if you can keep maybe 120k cash, then it makes calculations a lot more easy, because you can just dedicate that to buying the rookie, and then you could say, hey, well, I've got Sam Grill, who's 297, then I've got Lockie Jakes, who's 250, and then add them together. 300 plus 250, 550. I can grab a 550k primo. But with that, feel free to like or subscribe. Comment down below how you're planning to tackle upgrade season, how many primos you've got in your team, how many trades you've got left. If you're someone who's been very conservative, comment down below. So if you've got any interesting trade thoughts. And with that, I will see you in the next one. Happy coaching.